Hey there folks, Ben Farrell for Benn Farrell Freelance. This is episode 20 and we are still breaking down the different ways to end your story. This is part 2. Hey there, Ben Farrell for Benn Farrell Freelance. This is our second episode of our 3-part series about the different styles of endings. And before we get into our next 3 types of styles, I do want to talk about how important it is for your story to have some sort of closure. Now, before I say anything else, let me just say that anything that I suggest would be helpful to you. You could probably find 1,000 different examples of a novel or a stage play or a screenplay that went against that and was highly successful. Closure is basically the ability to leave something behind you and move forward, hopefully to your next work. However, you can still have closure for characters in your story, but your ending is actually ambiguous and doesn't provide closure for the reader, and they will still be satisfied by that. Choosing an ending style, or even coming up with something completely brand new if you can, is just as important as creating the entire structure of the work that you're creating. Mostly because that is the last effect you're going to have on people if they're seeing your play, seeing your movie, or reading your novel. One example of an ambiguous ending, but still allowing the reader to have closure, is from Stephen King's novel, Cell. Now, if you've seen the movie adaptation of it with John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, that movie is a complete work of dog shit. However, I think the novel is one of Stephen King's best, especially in the later half of his career. In the book, the main character searches for his son after this apocalypse-like takeover of technology through people's cell phones, turning people into zombies, traveling all through New England trying to find him. He does eventually find him, but I would call him at that point manageably deranged. Because of a bit of advice, the main character decides at the very end to take his cell phone, put it up next to his son, and see if he can reboot his son from the signal that completely wiped everybody into zombiehood. And that's where it ends. So for me, there was closure because the main character has his son back. But we don't know if his son goes back to normal. That's your ambiguous ending. So it is possible that even though you have an ambiguous ending, you can provide your reader closure. So let's go ahead and get moving into the next 3 ending styles that we're going to break down for you. The first one we're going to start off with is the lesson learned ending. The lesson learned ending is very much like the happy ever after ending that we talked about in part 1. However, it comes with a moral statement. Yes, all the plot points are resolved, but it also comes with a moral statement that usually is not very subtle. Most children's books and television series usually come with this type of ending. Aesop's Fables, most of those came with a moral at the very end as well. The most important aspect of the lesson learned ending is it really is dictated by what are you trying to say with your writing project? What message are you trying to put out there in the world? And if you want it to be that clear and not do it in a subtle way, then maybe a lesson learned ending is for you. The next ending style we're going to talk about is the twisted reveal, also known as the unexpected ending, and this is most popular among thrillers and murder mysteries. It could also be called a bait and switch ending because in your material leading up to your ending, you're giving them as many clues to going one way with your ending, and then at the very end, you take them a completely different way as long as it's organic and as long as it comes naturally. Here's our example of a twisted reveal ending.
I don't get it. After all of our hard work and effort, we never found out who was the person pushing kids off of the playground.
That's because it was me.
The last ending style we're going to talk about for this episode is the unresolved ending, also known as the cliffhanger ending, and those are most popular when you have a series of books planned. If you have a trilogy in mind, those types of endings in the first 2 books would be a great way to keep your reader engaged, expecting for the next book to come out or the next play to come out. If you're a screenwriter or a playwright, consider an unresolved ending for possibly at the end of almost every scene. Definitely at the end of your act structure, because that will keep your audience engaged throughout the entire story. Some prime examples of that is the Hunger Games series or the Harry Potter series. And if you're into sparkling vampires, the Twilight series. So again, here's our example of a cliffhanger ending. we let you go, I got a couple more responses from the writing groups that I belong to online. Shannon Hagelauer, she's a mystery writer, and she says the ending in mystery writing is so important. What she says is, I start with the antagonist, move on to the victim, create the crime and method of murder, then put them in the village I created to write about. All my books take place there. My protagonist is the same guy, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Sprinkle some red herrings, and ta-da! A book worthy of being Agatha Christie's doodle. Another writer, Ethel Sturger, says they think about the different vibes that are coming from their story. And then they write a couple of mock endings and see which one is better. Now that's actually a really good idea. If you're kind of stuck for the perfect ending, maybe write a few and then choose which one might work best. So that takes care of the 3 ending styles we're going to talk about in this episode. We're going to talk about the last 3 next week. And just remember, when you're choosing your ending, think about how important closure might be to your structure, even if it's an ambiguous ending. Closure is a very important aspect of almost everything in life. So just remember, your reader is a human being, your audience is filled with human beings, and they're going to want closure as well. So find the best way to do it when you are choosing your ending. Because the most important thing, I can't stress this enough, the most important thing about closure is...
It's been 2 months, guys. It's time for a new contest. Come on.
Yeah, so we gotta have 3-sentence stories sent our way once again for the next 2 months. Tell us your 3-sentence stories to go with this photo.
I know, guys, that was a pretty crazy photo.
So get those 3-sentence stories in. If your name is pulled out of our drawing, then you'll win a free copy of one of my stage plays.
And this stage play that we are doing is Morning News.
Morning News. It's a play about small town news, and you can learn more about it by going to BennFarrellWriter.com.
So stay safe and keep watching our video. Bye.